Pennsylvania is proud of its leadership in building green. We are home to 3 of the first 12 buildings in the United States to achieve certification as green under the U.S. Green Building Council's rating system. Our Building Green in Pennsylvania program has provided tools and some actual completed government projects that demonstrate how sustainable building design and construction is possible and cost-effective while achieving high-quality, people-friendly, energy-efficient buildings to live, learn, and work in. We know that our actions shape the world that our children and grandchildren will inherit. We must actively work to protect and restore the environment and our resources for the benefit of future generations. And building green will go a long way toward achieving that goal.
None of this is rocket science.
90% of all Americans' time is spent in buildings.
How does our office impact those employees?
40% of all resources go into buildings.
Recycled steel.
Recycled soda bottle, plastic, fabric.
40% of the energy is consumed by the building.
Heating, ventilating, air conditioning.
You need to right-size these systems.
40% of landfill waste is all coming from buildings.
We don't have to pay the price for a throwaway society.
Let's not waste all those foot candles.
It's total systems integration.
We're creating cultural institutions.
Clearly, you can make an impact if you can get to the major players. South Central was our first major green project, and I think it was a learning experience for the Commonwealth, certainly, as much as it was with the developers and the architects and so on.
Let me ask you a question or two on this from the occupant's point of view.
The introduction into high-performance green building design for me really started with all stakeholders and design professionals, engineers, manufacturers, client, owner, architect. It's critical that the owner and/or occupants, in some cases tenants, are part of that design process. Jim, I think it would be really critical for this team to get together again in 5 years and find out from...
I was sitting back not very long ago just trying to talk about, what is different, what has changed. No question about it. This was the defining project in terms of what was going to happen in the Commonwealth for green buildings in the future.
Everyone's life changed. This project was sort of the fulcrum where things came together and started working kind of in motion.
The occupant pays the rent. Well, I think the occupant then has an opportunity to create a climate for a high-performance green building.
The marketplace is shifting dramatically. 5 years ago, we were bringing this to all of our clients. More and more, our clients are bringing it to us and saying, hey, this is what we want. Do you know how to do this?
Miller Brothers owns the building. It's a lease project. DEP was involved intensely from the start.
They came to us with the specifications of how they thought a green project would be put together.
The main leader on the project, Jim Toothaker, made this tremendous transformation from the first time I met him, where he was kind of looking at me skeptically like, what's this soybean stuff, to sort of standing up at a meeting and proclaiming that he was going to change the way things were done.
We're able to, in many respects, drive the process of what the final outcome of the building is and what the quality of that building is.
I experienced government stating who we are as a people, not just regulating who we have to be as a people.
I think Pennsylvania and a lot of states moved from the old way of doing environmental business. What we've done in Pennsylvania is really build green building into our building specifications for what the state purchases. It becomes part of the regular business that we do. And I think as we do more of these projects, we're going to serve as a great example for private industry.
All of us.
What is a green building? Some folks thought it was material selection, some folks thought it was energy, other folks thought it was site issues.
This project.
LEED really says, okay, it's all of those. It's a consensus document that took about 7 years to put together with hundreds of professionals nationwide to, in fact, define the criteria by which you can say, okay, with certification, no question, we all agree this is a green building. At the South Central project for DEP, we did not have LEED.
On Cambria, we use LEED very much as a design tool.
Because we can go into that document and look at the 5 different areas of site, water, energy, materials, indoor environmental quality, and make some design decisions based on the criteria established for definition of green building.
The more we begin to integrate these systems, the more you need a commissioning agent.
When Steve, who was leading the team at the time, presented this terminology of integrated systems design, we all got it, it all made sense, but I don't think we really knew how to do it or how to go about it.
We had this excellent green team of consultants working on the project, but they got started very late.
An awful lot of building construction and design is still being done the way it was 20 years ago.
I've almost come to accept the serial style of executing a project.
Everybody goes off in their own little world and designs their own little system.
They throw the drawings over the wall, they end up in your cubicle, and you work on them, and you throw them over the wall to the next guy.
And then they all come back together at the end just to make sure it doesn't all run into each other.
And that whole mentality we pay for in mistakes and inefficiencies.
I was the architect. Marcus, at that point, was really brought on board as the lighting guy, right? And Scott was brought on as the materials guy.
I was really doing manufacturing, but I think at Scrub was more an integration relative to changing the attitude of the Commonwealth.
Well, I have to disagree with you there. I know you're involved every day, I'm involved every day. The shift in thinking is that the architect's role, honestly, is to ask more questions initially than to give answers. Don't muck up the process, you know, deep into construction. I think that's a real problem.
I'm not sure, and that's part of my point.
Draw out from everybody their level of expertise to apply it beyond their normal area of purview, so that instead of the standard linear way of designing projects, you can put all those systems together three-dimensionally into a holistic process.
We're being asked in many ways to stretch a little bit outside of our normally focused area, and for many people like me, that's really exciting and interesting.
We did a pretty decent job at South Central. The problem that I think we had was a lot of these systems weren't optimized and they weren't designed to try and all work together.
Marcus has this great question: how does simply selecting your paint color impact the sizing of your HVAC system?
If you can just increase the reflectances of the surfaces in the space, that will provide more efficient illumination to that space. And it's just one little number. It's just a shade difference in the paint, which minimizes the amount of energy that goes into those lights. It reduces first cost because you're pulling light fixtures out of the building. And then it also has an impact on the HVAC system because there's less heat going into the building.
I remember specifically the meeting where we were reviewing the mechanical systems and how we're going to get this distribution system
from that location out into the building.
And John just basically turned to me and said, okay, where's the best place for the mechanical room?
The engineer's response to that was momentary dead silence.
Right, yeah.
You know?
Yep.
I felt like a deer caught in headlights, like, oh my gosh.
It was a much different environment than he was used to working with.
Insulation value, we're trying to get R30 in that roof.
The whole construction process of the green technology really was a learning curve for us for the whole project.
From the beginning, everything can be integrated and sized down, if you will.
The building was split east wing and west wing, where we've installed 2 separate mechanical rooms.
As it turns out, it saved us a significant amount of money counterintuitively by utilizing first floor space, because now we had minimized the duct runs, weren't building the penthouse, stairs, access to it, the whole bit, and I think what that ended up being, about a $20,000, $30,000 savings, did we calculate? I forget.
It was more like 40.
40, that's right, that's what it was.
So what we want to do, I think the way we have this designed is we're going to take out all this.
The 2 sites between Cambria and South Central were very different. South Central was a brownfield site, a landfill for the debris from Hurricane Agnes.
Choosing that site has been restorative from an environmental point of view in terms of some of the other damages that have been done in the past.
We had the ribbons in the tree.
Cambria was a site that hadn't been built on prior to the development for this project in an industrial park.
This should hit the corner of the building down here. We purchased 9 acres. 3.5 acres of that was already wetlands. Wetlands is through here. Yeah. So we worked around preserving those wetlands.
Forested wetlands are common in Pennsylvania. They are characterized by trees and shrubs. Wetlands are a type of ecosystem that provide habitat for certain types of wildlife and for reptiles. But they provide a value and function not easily measured, such as flood control, retaining pollutants from going into the environment. You need to first take a look at the site during the proper times of the year to evaluate whether the area is a wetland and how you can avoid impacting the wetlands or to minimize the impacts. And if those can't happen, you can mitigate any impacts you may have.
We wound up redesigning the facility so that we could put the facility on without any disturbance of any of the wetlands. Going to deal with.
In addition, the stormwater systems were designed to put water into the wetlands and recharge the wetlands.
I would be hard-pressed to take a choice between a brownfield and a location designated to be developed that has all the infrastructure in place but may not be a brownfield. I think either of those are almost equal choices. But you won't find any of DEP's facilities out on new greenfields.
Light pollution has emerged as a problem that LEED addresses. If you look at the Earth at nighttime, you can see quite clearly where development has occurred.
You've got parking lots that, look like football stadiums. They're overlit. All we did was try to meet those recommended illumination levels for parking lots. And the only other thing that we did was we try and use
cutoff fixture mounts, which allows for that illumination to be cast down rather than out.
But again, this is timing.
How about water saver toilets? Gee, we have to flush 3 times. Are they really working?
You just create them in a way that they work.
It's like any piece of equipment used properly.
Pennsylvania has a lot of water as a state.
It's abused in terms of...
Even though we have a lot of water compared to many areas, let's not wait till we don't have any water before we start doing something about it. Let's start doing something about it consciously now.
LEED addresses this in their water efficiency credits. The goal in this case was to reduce water consumption by 30% relative to the requirements of the Energy Policy Act of 1992. Interestingly, the 30% goal is not that difficult to achieve. We did it by really doing 3 things. The big difference, I think, was the introduction of the waterless urinals. Number 1, waterless urinals. It's a standard in most Department of Defense projects now. Number 2, push rod automatic faucet controls, which reduce hand washing water by about 40%. And number 3, using, in this case, low flow shower heads.
Well, what's that really amount to in an office building? Let me give you an example of what it amounts to. The water company has visited with us on 2 different occasions at this point at the Cambria office, wondering about the water consumption for the building, because our monthly water consumption is the equivalent of 1 to 2 residences in the area, and this is for an office building that houses 125 people.
The difference between the 2 projects is night and day.
Okay. Yeah. This is still facing west before it's got sun, so.
On South Central, we were able to reduce the amount of energy that the lights use. We put in high-quality lighting with indirect lighting. We use high-reflectance ceiling tiles. We incorporated some daylighting into South Central. On Cambria, we took it a next step.
From a performance standards point of view, the most important one and the one that we start with is that we've established an energy budget for the entire building.
The light load, the plug load, and the HVAC load.
That when it all is put together, can't exceed a certain amount of BTUs. At the moment, it's 40,000 BTUs per square foot annually.
Let's design a building that will reduce energy consumption by 50%. That's where we like to start. Very first thing is solar orientation.
We don't light up our buildings like a Christmas tree. We orient the buildings so that they can take advantage of the sun.
You can look at Anasazi and Pueblo Indian dwellings in the southwestern United States. They knew it makes sense energy-wise